Well, good afternoon. I usually do this in the morning, but I'm a little behind schedule today, so please bear with me. Hey, I'm going to talk about communication. Talking to people. I mean, that's one form. Actually, I'm talking to you by means of another form, and that's video. Communication, emails, text messages, phone calls, in person, communication, individual to group, group to individual. There's so many different forms and so many different opportunities of communication. And then add into, what am I communicating? Well, you know what I'm communicating. That's a definitive answer. I know that I'm going to be communicating about Jesus, but the challenge is, how does one communicate about Jesus in a very multifaceted, multi-angled, multi ways in which communication happens? Stick around. Hopefully we'll have a really good conversation on this one. We'll be right back. Communication. Hello, my name is Bob, and I am talking to you. And I'm not sure exactly who I'm talking to. They tell me how many people are listening to my verbiage, but don't know who is listening to my verbiage. And I hope many people are listening to my verbiage. Okay, I bambly aside, but it is about communication. What we communicate, how we communicate, when we communicate, why, and probably a few more questions to answer about that. I don't know if we're going to get to all of those today, but we will get to at least what we communicate, and that's Jesus. Here at Faith, me specifically too, our people communicate Jesus. Now, we have multiple ways by which we communicate Jesus. What's one of them? Well, this method we're using right now, our YouTube channel. And I'm going to communicate this. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to our channel, ring the bell to be notified of our next video so that you will be notified of our next video. Anyway, this is one means. I mean, there's social media sites. We happen to choose at Faith, Facebook and Instagram. There are other options that we could potentially use. I'm not going to say that it's not possible, but it's not happening. So we're choosing the forms by which we communicate. There's other layers of communication that we use. We use Bible studies. Now, during the pandemic, we were using strictly online Bible studies. We were using the means called Zoom. Now, we're using Zoom to help people who are away from the community in order to do, let's say, meetings, board meetings and the like, but we're not using that any longer by means of communicating. So our Bible studies are now back in-house, and so again, love to see you in space and time. We have multiple Bible studies for you. I will make note of those multiple Bible studies along the bottom of the screen for you, and they'll be kind of moving along because there's more than just one that fits into this whole time period. So, Bible studies in person, face-to-face, engaged in dialogue. Right now, this is a monologue. Unless you comment, then it'll turn it into a dialogue. But right now, it's a monologue. Until I started doing these videos, I was writing in a blog on my website. Now, if you've gone to our website, www.faithhuntsville.org, you will click the blog link and it'll show how very old those blogs are. That's about the time I started doing this type of communication. So there's blogging. That's another form of communication. It's a written form along with emails, text messages. Those are written forms of communication. Social media is written for the most part. Could be videoed, could be memes, and I don't know all the terminology thereof. But the reality is that these are all different forms of communicating. And for us, I'm going to share with you the styles of which we communicate. So Bible studies is one. We also communicate in our time of worship service. Now, worship service takes two sides of communication. We are doing the in-house worship. And if you remember, during the pandemic, we were doing recordings, live streaming it, with an empty house there in the beginning. Then a very mostly empty house until the restrictions were lifted and then we were able to go back to full house. Even still, with a full house available to all of us now, many people are choosing to do the online version of our worship service, meaning they're live streaming it. They're participating in the worship service in their home. Now, I've done this a couple of times while my wife and I were on vacation away from a Sunday, and we participated in the live stream version of it. It's different, a different experience, different time, different way of doing it, but again, it's all about communication of that message. That message is about Jesus, the proclamation of God and Jesus Christ. That's our focus, and that's why we do all these multiple different forms of communication. Now, that's our worship service. Now, those are the fundamental ways by which we communicate. Now, we use a couple of old school to do internal communication. One of them is called the bulletin. Now, a bulletin is a piece of paper or a few sheets of paper folded up all nice, and it gives us the announcements of what's coming up in the next week and what's happening in the next couple of weeks or whatever. It's handed out during the time of worship. Again, it's a form of communication. We're also going back to the old paper newsletter. Again, it's an internal communication. It communicates to the people of what we're doing. Written communication. And then there's one last communication to which I would like to share with you. And that's the one-on-one, face-to-face. Now, those happen when we fundamentally do, let's say, visitations, when we go out and meet people in the community. We're walking, let's say we're going through HEB, and we run into, that's happened to me multiple times, where somebody, a member of the congregation, is out grocery shopping, so am I, and we end up having a conversation standing in the aisles at HEB. That's great. It's fantastic. We get a chance to talk to one another. Walking past each other in the neighborhoods, one-on-one communications. I'm not saying they have to be long, drawn-out, in-depth conversations, but it's just those, hi, how are you doing? Good. What's going on? Anything? Man, nothing really. Bye. Is communication. But the interesting thing, what are we communicating? Even in those, we're communicating Jesus. Wait a minute, you're communicating Jesus in one of those walk-by, pass-bys? Well, if they know who you are, yeah, you are. If they know that you're a believer, and most people, obviously, because of my profession, know that I'm a believer, they know I'm communicating Jesus. I may not say the exact words every week, but I'm still communicating. And lastly, I want to talk about communication. All these different forms are all different ways in order to get the message of Jesus out into people's lives. So the question is, to whom are we communicating? And you already know the answer to that question because you're watching this video. You, and you, and you, and you. How many ever of you are watching this video? Or watching the live stream, participating in worship service, participating in Bible studies, receiving information by means of emails, text messages, phone calls, face-to-faces. We're all communicating Jesus, and we're talking to you. Now, for what reason? What is the reason we are communicating to you? It's the same answer as what is the message. It's to get Jesus into your life. Now, the Holy Spirit is the one who actually converts faith. The Holy Spirit is the one who changes people's lives from sinner to saint. And the Holy Spirit uses people like you and I in order to make that happen. We communicate Jesus. Many times it's overt. I'm going to tell you about Jesus. I'll use it as a perfect example. Earlier today, I was talking with a lady who is going to be part of our staff here at Faith as an aide, and her husband and her just recently moved from one community to here at Huntsville. And it was brought to my attention that she was interested in talking about the church. Spent 10 minutes talking to her about faith and the ministry that we have here. Hopefully and prayerfully, she and her husband will be here Sunday morning for worship. When I escorted this person out from my office into the hallway so she can head out to the parking lot, there was a young lady sitting in one of the chairs and then in the foyer of the office area. And she was sitting there looking, and I said, and she had a Faith Lutheran School t-shirt on. So she's one of our aides, or in the process of being. And I said, you going home for work? And she was telling me a story, and I said, I noticed you just started here. Where are you working? She told me what classroom she was working in right now. And I said, I'm just going to put in a plug. Love to have you in worship. And she said, I am kind of looking for a new church. You never know with whom you communicate how it's going to be received. So I hope to see her on Sunday morning. The bottom line is, we communicate Jesus for the express purpose of that Jesus can be a part of their life and a part of our conversation. And however the communication happens, whatever methodology the communication happens, it happens with great intent of bringing Jesus to people. All right, I spent enough time talking about Jesus and communication to you today. I look forward to seeing you this coming Sunday. We've got the next episode of The Word coming up. Also, we have Sunday school at 9:15. Be here, in place, in spot. Okay, that's an odd way of saying it, but it worked out. And be here and study God's Word and interact within the framework of the group. Be here for worship as we interact with one another by singing, preaching, and praying and talking about Jesus during our time of worship, whether you're on live stream or whether you're in house. Again, any comments, any thoughts, please let me know, and we will talk to you Sunday. Have a great one. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.